What's up, everyone? This is Brett from Rants, and this is going to be our House of the Dragon Episode 2 review. Almost said Game of Thrones review because it's starting to kind of look like Game of Thrones in a lot of different ways. But I got one big problem with the first two episodes, and I feel like it needs to solve this problem and do it quickly, and I think it will in Episode 3. But we haven't got enough action here. Love the drama, love the interactions between the characters, love the dialogue so far. But I do have a problem with this. At the end of the day, it's a prequel to Game of Thrones, and I just expect a little bit more violence when it comes to this. I feel like we have just not got what I was expecting, what many Game of Thrones fans were expecting when it comes to this family turmoil that is the Targaryens, fighting basically over the crown. I just thought there would be a little bit more backstabbing, a little bit more cutthroat than what we've got. Instead, we've got this medieval drama that's taking place between families, and it just involves a little bit of pitter-patter between these characters' interactions. But not really action oriented. Not the backstabbing and, like I said, cutthroat mentality of Game of Thrones. We got the birthing scene, and George R. R. Martin tried to say, well, that's going to be its red wedding. Well, that's a piss poor red wedding. I mean, that's not exactly. That was probably one of the worst scenes in Game of Thrones and House of Dragon compared. Probably one of the worst scenes probably in television, if you really ask me. I totally get it from a 2022 perspective. If you are of a certain mindset, probably progressive more, you're probably looking at that and you're like, oh wow, this is great that they're kind of talking about the whole abortion thing and how the patriarchy is evil and whatnot. And I totally get that if that's where you want to go with it. But I guess when I watch these shows, I don't think of 2022, and I don't care about the politics and the ideologies that come from now. I care about seeing, like I said, this, even though it's a fantasy world, a medieval drama. I expect it to have those kind of references, not references to the here and now. I felt like episode 1 maybe had a little bit too much of that, and you know what? I was pleasantly surprised. Episode 2 didn't really. They still try so hard to make this a show about how women are not being heard, and that if only the women could get together, they're just so much smarter than the men. It seems like that's still a problem in episode 2. Rhaenys making that claim that she is, oh man, if I just basically had some balls, I would have been the heir. No. From what I've seen so far, I understand totally why she was passed up for Viserys. He's just better. It's not because he's a man. It's because he's just probably someone that cares more about the realm than what she does, or at least what she's done so far. Because you take the scene with the 12-year-old Lena. Lena Velaryon. They are trying to get her married off to the king. The girl's 12, or like 12, around that age. That was a cringeworthy scene, where you've got a king that's like, nah, this is weird. I don't want no part of this. But then you've got Rhaenys Velaryon, and, saying, oh, well, hey, this is, and Corlys too, being like, oh, well, hey, this is great if we could get our, 12-year-old daughter married off to this 50-year-old king. That's just weird. Totally get it. Maybe, again, I'm falling for the same thing that a lot of these other people are falling, looking at from a 2022 mindset, but I'm just like, that looked bad on screen. That just looked really bad, and it made me care less about the characters of Rhaenys and Corlys. Because now when I see Corliss on screen, and I was a fan of him in episode 1, but when I see him on screen now, all I think about is that's the dude that was trying to get his 11 or 12-year-old daughter married off to a 50-year-old man. Like, that's just all the power in the world isn't worth that, buddy. That just made me care less about those particular characters. And you know what? I didn't enjoy Rhaenys when she was talking to Rhaenyra. And again, she was trying to say, oh, well, I wasn't chosen because of this. And they're going to think of you in the same way. And I feel like Rhaenys is like the older version of Rhaenyra in a lot of ways. Because Rhaenyra, she spends a lot of time sulking about, whoa, why am I not looked at as the heir? You know, and it's really only her that's not looking at it in that way. Like, she's going around like, I wish my father, you know, looked at me as a son. Well, he doesn't look at you as a son. He understands fully and totally what the problems are going to be when it comes to having a daughter as an heir, and what that's going to mean for the realm, and the challenges that are going to come from all those bannermen to keep this realm intact. By doing this, by making her this heir. And all I get from Rhaenyra is just a bunch of sulking. There's a bunch of sulking. And then she's like, oh, well, if I'm going to change things when I become queen. No, you're not. Because at the end of the day, you're not as smart as your father, simply because he understands the bigger picture. You're thinking smaller picture. You're insulted by maybe what you think inside your head, not what he's saying aloud. And that kind of pisses me off when it comes to this character. Is she's too worried about being a female, and he's worried about the realm. And that's just a problem that I think this show's going to have all the way around. Is we're going to have a lot of sulking Rhaenyra. A lot of sulking. We got it at the very end of this episode. But let's go ahead and let's get to... Oh, man. I did enjoy... I know I've complained a lot so far about how I felt towards these characters. But I did really enjoy a lot of scenes in this. A lot of scenes. It was a pretty good episode overall. I enjoyed the Viserys and the Alicent Hightower scenes. It seems like to me, it has made Viserys a really likable individual. Really likable individual. And it's made me care a lot for Alicent Hightower as well. Because it seems like the two of them actually do care about each other. It really does. It doesn't seem like one of those kind of unions, I guess, where it feels forced. It was really kind of fun watching the two interact and watching how Alicent really, makes gestures of kindness to him. Not because she's wanting something, but just because she's a good person and she does care about Viserys. And I really enjoyed those particular scenes when it... And you know what? I'm not normally a fan of Otto Hightower, but I did actually like his scene with Viserys as well. When they're talking about, what it could mean to have, to remarry and all of that stuff, to have a queen, and Viserys having to do it because he's king. I liked what Otto Hightower had to say about it, where he says, hey, I've just lost my wife just like you just lost your wife. And he says, basically, even though you're king, I wouldn't want to be in your place, because I wouldn't want to have to remarry and try to replace the love of my life like that, just for the sake of the kingdom. I like that. I don't know why that just hit me hard, but I was like, man, that's actually how I would feel personally if I was in his boots and I looked at this king and I was like, wow, my wife just died and his wife just died, and he's going to have to, get in this loveless marriage to right after his wife passes. And that just be like, even if he's king, you're like, oh man, I wouldn't want to be that guy. Like, that would be terrible. So I did really enjoy that scene. I thought Dragonstone looked amazing. I know I'm going kind of all over the place, but I'm just trying to go just where my thoughts are trying to lead. I did really enjoy Dragonstone. It looked so eerie and scary and just amazing. That's probably the best. I mean, this show's looked good all the way around, but I thought that was the best visual effects of seeing the dragon come from underneath the fog, and just the dragons just kind of hanging around on the same place that we saw Daenerys and we saw Jon Snow and Stannis Baratheon all those years back watching Game of Thrones. And it was a subtle kind of hint towards Game of Thrones of, hey, we're back in Dragonstone. But it worked for me. It really worked for me, and I enjoyed those scenes. I loved the standoff between Daemon Targaryen and Otto Hightower. Again, that was just a really cool scene. And I get it. They're like, oh, well, Rhaenyra, she comes in there and saves the day. A woman has saved the day. And I guess it kind of looked that way. But at the end of the day, I don't really think Daemon is willing. He might love speaking the words, but I don't think he's really there yet at wanting to challenge his brother. So I don't think he would have really come to blows with Otto Hightower over an egg in the first place. I think he just is testing the waters to see how far he can push and what his brother will actually do. I almost think in this weird way he's trying to make his brother a better ruler by testing him, because it feels like he's been overrun by the small council, that no one listens to him and no one really thinks of him as powerful king. Almost kind of like what Corlys Velaryon said early in that episode, where he was like, no one respects you. I almost kind of think this is almost Daemon's way in this weird sense to say, hey, brother, I'm going to test you. I'm going to make you into the king that you need to be so that you can be respected. I know a lot of people would probably disagree with me on that, and I totally understand that. But that's just what I'm seeing just from that and from his interaction with Corlys Velaryon. You tell he does, Daemon, in this weird sense, does really care about his family. He does really care about his brother. But I don't think that scene would have come to blows anyways, simply because, hey, that would have been a death sentence if he would have done that. And he would have had no choice to come against his brother. And I don't think he would have had the backing of anybody at that point if he would have done that. So he would have been on his own. So that would have been suicide on his part. But I still enjoyed the scene. Thought it was a good interaction between Rhaenyra and Daemon too. But it was just Dragonstone just looked so cool all the way around, and it had that nostalgic feel to it. So I really loved that as well. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to, looking at where this show's going, I just got some little problems with even the scenes that I liked. Like I said, I enjoyed the Dragonstone scene, but I had a problem with the way Rhaenyra acted. And again, I keep going back to this. Rhaenyra, she's not my favorite character by any stretch of the imagination, even though I thought she was better in episode 2 than what she was in episode 1. But she has this way about her of where she goes up to her father and she says, hey, I understand you got to pick a queen. And then she takes off Dragonstone without his permission, and he doesn't get it. He just barely gets on to her about it. He is king of the freaking realm, for goodness sakes, but he doesn't even correct his own daughter. Like, he doesn't put his foot down in any way. But she goes against him, threatening the realm by, if something would have happened to her, the whole realm would go into chaos, because then he would be left with no heirs. And so you've got this going on. And then when they, at the very end, and you've got that scene where, Viserys picks a wife, and he says it's going to be Alicent Hightower, and of course Valerian gets mad, and then you've got Rhaenyra, and she just gets pissed and takes off. Like, how dare you not tell me who you were going to pick? Well, you didn't tell him that you were going to Dragonstone. Could have died. His brother is in almost rebellion mode. Could have killed her in an instant. She even asked Daemon, if you would, hey, you want to kill me? Kill me. if something like that would have happened, the whole realm would have been in chaos. And I feel like they try to make it where that Viserys is kind of betraying his daughter by picking Alicent. But at the end of the day, man, when you put up a scene of a 12-year-old Valerian girl, or maybe a almost grown Alicent Hightower, if not grown Alicent Hightower, if you got those two to pick from, I think you're going to pick Alicent Hightower. Like, when they gave me the choice between the two, I was like, Alicent Hightower all the way. So I'm like, they're trying to make that like it's a little betrayal, and I don't feel like that's a betrayal, because at the same time, I feel like what she did was worse than what he did in that regard. She's the one that gave him permission to go find a wife. He didn't necessarily have to tell her who it was. And he, at that time, didn't even have his mind made up that that's who it was going to be anyways. But overall, when it comes to it, I'm really looking forward to the Daemon and Corlys Velaryon alliance that's happening, because after, of course, Corlys Velaryon's daughter is chosen as the king's wife, he gets mad, wants to go to Daemon and basically rebel to a certain extent. I'm not saying he's rebelling against the king, but he's like, it is his form of rebelling, because the king's not wanting to do something about the problem, and so he's going behind the king's back and going to his brother Daemon to actually do it as well. And of course, basically in an alliance, this is, he now has, Daemon knows that he's got Corlys Velaryon, who has the biggest ships, the biggest navy, basically the whole realm's navy at his disposal to take on his brother if need be. So I think that's a pretty big thing. I really am looking forward to seeing the crab feeder. Those scenes with the crabs were rough, but they were cool to see. I mean, I guess you could say it's some form of violence that we've got to see, but I don't know. I just overall, I keep going back to it. As much as I love the back and forth between the characters, I would love to see a little bit more action. A little bit more action. I want to see somebody do something. I want to see somebody kill somebody. I want to see something going on instead of what we have seen so far. So overall, I mean, I still give this episode a 7 out of 10. I thought it was great all the way around. I would have given it a higher grade if Rhaenyra didn't spend all of her time sulking. If there wasn't that Rhaenys Velaryon scene about, if I was a male, I would be king. No. Like, the other person has dragons. Your husband has a fleet. So, I'm like, dragons. So that's just the way I look at it. So, overall, and another thing that pissed me off and just really was yucky was that they would even put that 12-year-old Laena Velaryon scene in there. That was just a terrible scene. That is something that's going to stick with me, that I'm going to probably hold against this show for the rest of the season, if not forever, because that was just so wrong of a scene. Just so wrong of a scene. Totally get it. I'm doing the exact same thing that I said that other people don't need to be doing when it comes to Game of Thrones. But at the end of the day, when you see that on screen, it's hard not to be cringed. It's just cringeworthy all the way around. But yeah, like I said, I give it a 7 out of 10. Guys, let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know. And as always, thank y'all so much for watching. Y'all take care.